Hello and welcome to WMLT News. I'm Jared Klein.
And I'm Brian Allen. As the birth rate falls in West Virginia, the rate of teenagers giving birth is on the rise in McDowell County. In the past 5 years, it has jumped 34%, doubling the statewide rate. The latest West Virginia Kids Count report showed that there were 96 births for every 1,000 girls in 2010. McDowell County is currently the highest in birth rate, with Mingo County following with 17 births per 1,000 girls. Director of Kids Count, Margie Hale, says these facts are so alarming because it is putting both the mothers and baby at risk. She also states that it is now time for the community and parents to ensure that sex education is properly taught to decrease the risk.
The production of apples in West Virginia increased in 2012. According to the Associated Press, growers harvested 91 million pounds of apples, which is a 36% jump from the previous years. This increased growth is thanks to a warmer winter which extended the growing season. A decline in the stink bug population of the eastern panhandle also contributed to this increase. This was the opposite of national rates, which the U.S. Department of Agriculture report said fell by 4%. David White was found guilty of 21 arson, intimidation, and retaliation charges in Greenbrier County. White and 4 alleged accomplices set fire to vehicles at the Raynell detachment of the West Virginia State Police Department on December 15, 2012. White's accomplices are still awaiting trial. In total, 8 vehicles were destroyed. The sentencing of White is still pending. With the hopes for spring to come to Concord, had its annual Groundhog's Day breakfast where it was predicted to have 6 more weeks of winter. Courtney Van Adder has more.
Friday, February 1st, Concord held its 35th annual Groundhog Day breakfast, the day prior to the official Groundhog Day. This event included a gourmet breakfast, which was then followed by a presentation by Professor Dr. John Fazio and students Han Tran and Jeremiah Nelson, showing a correlation between the groundhog predictions and the stock market. Then, Alicia Benzide, Concord's interim vice president of advancement, introduced our Grand Groundhog Watcher. This year's Grand Groundhog Watcher was volunteer, playwright, actress, and community leader Louise Dawson Stoker. Stoker is a lifelong resident and now mayor of Bramwell, West Virginia. Stoker was honored to be the Grand Groundhog Watcher, saying, "Being invited and being here is a magic moment for me." She told the audience, "Do not be afraid of your shadow, because the groundhog who is afraid of his shadow and goes back into his burrow, he does not experience
6 weeks of magic moments. Think of what you missed. Thank you so much, all of you. This is wonderful."
According to tradition, if the groundhog sees his shadow the morning of February 2nd, 6 more weeks of winter can be expected, and if he does not see his shadow, an early spring is on its way. President Aloya shared his prediction via text as he was underground having his yearly meeting with Concord Charlie.
It's from Dr. Aloya. It says, "I am currently in Concord Charlie's burrow." He is using his new computer software to make his prediction. ... Wait. We are getting a signal. ...
Concord Charlie saw his shadow, predicting 6 more weeks of winter. However, other groundhogs, such as Punxsutawney Phil from Pennsylvania, predicts an early spring. For WMLT, this is Courtney Van Adder.
Thanks, Courtney. Raspberry Pi has taken the tinkering world by storm. It may sound like the name of a geeky dessert, but it's actually one of the hottest and cheapest little computers in the world. Almost 1 million of these $35 machines have shipped since last February. The computer, which is the size of a credit card, has been sold to educators, hobbyists, and tinkerers around the world. The Raspberry Pi was intended to replace the expensive computers in school science labs for less than the price of a new keyboard. A teacher could plug in the Pi and connect it to older peripherals that might be lying around. Because Pi initially ran only Linux, a free operating system popular with programmers and hobbyists, students would have a learning curve.
Stay tuned. We will return with more WMLT News in just a moment.
Last week, Iran sent a monkey into space on an Iranian rocket from an undisclosed location. The monkey has returned safely from space. Iran has been training 2 astronauts that they plan to send into space between 2016 and 2018. The first plan is to send the astronauts into suborbital space, up to 200 kilometers for about 30 minutes. The United States at first doubted the successful return of the monkey and even questioned the trip as a whole. But Jonathan McDowell, a Harvard astronomer who tracks rocket launches and space activity, backed up Iran, claiming that the monkey space flight was real. A concert was held Thursday by the Make-A-Wish Foundation to raise money for a local child with cancer to go to Disney World. The performers include many local folk and rock artists. The concert was sponsored by the Concord University Organizational Communication class.
With the amount of snow we have received this year, near record highs so far, schools across the region are running out of snow days. Each school district has a certain amount of snow days they get each year that do not interfere with their required 180 days of class. Because of snow in October and recent gusts of winter weather, schools are having to use more snow days this year than normal. Raleigh County schools have already had to use their 8th and final snow day on Monday. Raleigh County Superintendent Jim Brown stated that he and the county's leadership committee, quote, will do their very best to minimize the time out of the classrooms, end quote. Nicholas County, which has been most affected by October's Superstorm Sandy, has already used 10 days, 2 days over their maximum amount. Fayette, Summers, Wyoming, and other area counties are facing the same problems, being forced to cut early release dates and make up class time whenever possible. According to state law, the last day of classes cannot be extended even if the mandatory 180 days is not met. A Fayette County man has been sentenced to 5 years in U.S. District Court in Charleston for the distribution of oxycodone. The man, Kenneth James Taylor of Page, West Virginia, pleaded guilty to selling 3 30-milligram oxycodone pills to an individual cooperating with law enforcement last March. He also admitted to involvement in drug trafficking. Now, with Ticket or Leave It, is Austin Bess.
The movie industry is now looking to bring some favorite books and tales to the big screen. Books such as The Hobbit have made an appearance on the big screen recently. The young Bilbo Baggins journeys to reclaim the lost dwarf kingdom, which had long ago been captured. He takes his challenging journey and along the way faces many challenges. This movie brings the writing of Tolkien's The Hobbit to life with the large-scale fantasy and visuals. Life of Pi takes us on another journey full of fantasy as we follow a young boy in the Pacific Ocean after a shipwreck. Pi is the son of a zookeeper en route to a new life in Canada with his family. He finds himself stranded on a lifeboat alongside his beastly zoo companions. The spin-off of the classic fairy tale Hansel and Gretel brings us the story of Hansel and Gretel, who are now fiercely skilled bounty hunters after the notorious witch. These two team up and purge the world of witches. The grown-up versions of the classic fairy tale children work together to battle away the witches who have hunted children for years. This is Austin Bess with your Ticket or Leave It. Back to you at the desk.
West Virginia House Speaker Rick Thompson is concerned about mine safety and the lack of progress the Tomlin administration has taken to implement the state's new mine safety law. He is particularly worried about the rules related to the control of methane in coal dust. Thompson said, quote, "We are not the enforcement side of things at the legislature, but when we pass a law, we expect it to be enforced," end quote. On Monday, Thompson and Democrat Wayne met with state of mine officials to discuss the state's failure to enforce key provisions of the bill passed last year after the Big Branch mine disaster. State law says it is the duty of mine safety inspectors to note each violation he or she finds and have an appropriate penalty for any health or safety rule violations. Last year, legislation approved a rule to specifically mandate notices of rock dust violations, but the agency withdrew the rule after complaints from the mining industry, and a new rule has not yet been proposed. And now, here with this week's CU Minute is Richard Babbage.
The Greeks are out in action yet again for Spring Rush. Concord's various fraternities and sororities have spent the first week of February promoting their organizations in an attempt to recruit new members. This includes tables set up around the Student Center and interest meetings. Only time will tell how successful the Greek efforts have been. Concord University students will be partnering with the United Way of the Virginias to provide free volunteer income tax preparation assistance. The site at Concord University is located in the Marsh Library. The help will be available every Tuesday until April. Appointments can be made by contacting the United Way of the Virginias between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. Bluefield State College will also be offering this assistance. That's all from Concord this week. Back to you guys at the desk.
The Giles County Animal Shelter will no longer be accepting volunteers. A temporary policy has been put in place due to problems stemming from several former volunteers. The shelter is doubling its hours beginning on March 1st. Animal Control Officer Melvin Dalton says the shelter plans on working with the nonprofit group Hope Alliance. Future volunteers at the shelter will have to pass a screening and be coordinated by the Giles County Office of Animal Control. The shelter is still taking in stray animals and caring for them despite the recent changes.
Virginia Tech researchers and Consol Energy are teaming up with the National Energy Technology Laboratory in Morgantown to explore the options of storing carbon dioxide in smaller and less valuable coal seams. Consol, a company based in Pennsylvania, is trying to limit as much as 20,000 tons of the greenhouse gas. Carbon dioxide is also a huge contributor to global warming. Steve Winberg, the vice president of Consol, says that there are plans to install 3 cold methane wells near Buchanan, Virginia for the project, which is set to commence this fall. It is expected that the carbon dioxide will be absorbed, as well as stimulate the release of methane. On Monday, a team of experts at the University of Leicester have concluded that the skeletal remains found underneath a parking lot are those of King Richard III. This discovery will help finish the story of Richard's fate and death at the Battle of Bosworth Field. Discovery of the bones, as well as the DNA testing, were funded by the Richard III Society, an organization that has worked for decades to discover the truth about King Richard's fate. Of the team at the University of Leicester says that the society was responsible for raising most of the estimated $250,000 that it cost to carry out the exhumation and research that led to confirmation that Richard had been found.
Thank you for watching WMLT News. I'm Brian Allen.
And I'm Jared Klein. Tune in again in 2 weeks.